Good evening from Egypt, Cairo, everyone. Thanks for everyone who's following up, and also for our esteemed guests, our great Ashoka Fellows. It is always wonderful to meet Ashoka Fellows, and I am a little biased to women, so also women Ashoka Fellows, but I love all Ashoka Fellows, so men do not get upset. But really, I would like to welcome you all to the Wise Up series. Wise is our initiative and framework in Ashoka, which is led from the South, but it's a global initiative and a framework. It's Women Initiative for Social Entrepreneurship. And really the objective of the series of Wise Up, which is one component of the whole initiative, is really to create a movement in order to change the narrative about women's success, about how we define success in general. It is not to compare men to women. It is not to say somebody's doing something different even, but we are saying that the measurement of success or redefining success for social entrepreneurs in general, but for women in particular, needs to be revised, revisited. Up till now, we have always been defining success to mean scale, what the mainstream calls scale up. We have redefined it differently based on a big survey that Ashoka did with many of our fellows. As you know, Ashoka is a global platform. We have more than 3,800 fellows. 40% of them are women. And we did a survey, and one of the results of it was to see the impact of different of our fellows, different types of our fellows, women and men. And we discovered that scaling out is when you replicate and franchise and go to different geographical areas, which is okay, and it is acknowledged and respected. But there are other types of growth and success, like scaling up. And for us, scaling up is when you change the policy or a law or a regulation in the government that then affects generations to come, but also affects millions of people. And we need to, highlight this as a form of impact and success, and which a lot of women do that because of the type of causes that we adopt. But also scaling deep, which is when we transform traditions or behavior or the way we think or mindsets. And again, when women work on reading or on healthcare or violence against women, usually this is where we are trying to change mindsets and shift paradigms about women or a particular vulnerable group. So this is really what we're trying to do with WISE, to redefine success, to elect more women in Ashoka, but also to really also highlight that we need to work with younger girls. And so that's how we did the series yesterday on young change makers who are women. Many things we want to do, but this series is to showcase. So in the series, we're showcasing women, Ashoka Fellows, who have really impacted in different ways their communities, their countries, their laws. Can you hear me? Okay, good. So this is what we want. And from showcasing these wonderful experiences and projects, we are and impact, we want to influence the ecosystem, and mainly donors and universities. We will share your stories today, and we have been sharing stories of a lot of women leaders and innovators in the social sector. And we want to showcase the success, the impact, and the time it takes to change mindsets, the time it takes to change policies. And therefore, we want the donors to understand that and then really invest, because that's much, much longer term, and it has really, really ripples and replication effect for generations to come. And we want them to be patient, because this is real sustainable change. Today, the session is also about another type of shift. As we all know, many of the methodologies and theories in the ecosystem is driven by the global north. And I think a lot of it is very applicable and it applies to everyone, and I think a lot of it has credibility. But also, we want to share your stories, because we also want to showcase that there are paradigm shifts and theories and new approaches related to impact that come from the South. That social entrepreneurs from the South, and in this case women, have influenced their countries, but they also have theories of change that needs to be heard. And that's one of the reasons why today we are, sharing your learnings, your insights, your impact, the type of challenges you have overcome. And this is another thing about WISE. We are showcasing cases of women who have done what everybody said they will not do, who have really succeeded, because we want to also inspire women everywhere and younger women not to, not to despair. There are challenges we face, but we overcome these challenges if we have the will and if we are entrepreneurs and wonderful leaders like you. So why is it about redefining success and having more women on the table? This session is about showcasing stories of great women and their impact and their insights in the South. Saying that, I want us to start introducing my esteemed guests, wonderful Ashoka Fellows. So I'll start with Rana Dajani, the founder of We Love Reading. She's an Ashoka Fellow from Jordan. Rana developed the community-based model We Love Reading. The aim was to encourage children to read for pleasure, but also help them understand and cultivate the culture of I can, which is really creating change makers out of them. But doing this, she was able to get the buy-in of all communities, and she's going to talk about this. And this is another methodology by women. She was able to get the buy-in of mothers and fathers and schools and priests and imams from the mosques. And this is why it succeeded and spread to 53 countries, and she will talk about it. But also, Rana is an Ashoka Fellow, first and foremost, but also she received the Synergus Arab World Social Innovators Award, the World Innovation Summit in Education Award, the King Hussein Medal of Honor, the Star Award, the UNESCO International Literacy Prize, World Literacy Council Award, the Jacobs Social Entrepreneurship Award, the Science and Technology and Innovation Award, and the Star Award. She has also been recognized by the Clinton Global Initiative and the Library of Congress as the best practice and the IDEO.org Best Refugees Education Program. So we have with us a star, but you're all stars. And Rana is going to share with us her story, her impact, and her methodology, which I think is very important to share with the world. We have also, who disappeared from my screen, we have also Nami Solanki, founder of Community Health Initiative. She is an Ashoka Fellow from Liberia. She's a feminist, a human rights activist, humanitarian, and the founder and executive director of Community Healthcare Initiative, an NGO that provides healthcare and social services to women and children in underserved communities in Liberia. She has built an industry out of simple, low-cost healthcare solutions to solve some of the most pressing health challenges that women face. Through the design of locally made, reusable, and affordable health products for women and girls, she is positioning women to solve their health problem in a more sustainable way. And again, we will hear her story and hear her impact and see how she changed the industry itself. And this takes time and effort, but it also takes a methodology that a lot of our female social entrepreneurs use, which is really collaboration, spreading the know-how, and getting the buy-in of the community. Which means you work within the system to change the system. My friend, whom I haven't seen for a long time, she knows who she is, Mariana Banos, founder of Pro Ayuda a la Mujer, Ashoka Fellow, Mexico. Mariana has introduced a groundbreaking mechanism for widening access to psychological services for women of all socioeconomic backgrounds, and especially women who face violence at home and domestic violence but again, which was not there. Her organization's toll-free phone line represents the first call center in Mexico to offer a full-service psychological and legal support network to women facing domestic violence. She has built alliances with more than 5,000 public and private healthcare and legal institutions to accommodate specific cases. But what Mariana will tell us also was how she was able to influence the private sector to invest in her. What Mariana will tell us was how she turned the private, what people say a private matter, which is domestic violence and it shouldn't be private, into a public matter that influences even how the street is safe. And I think this is a lesson for all of us that, we are able to do that. We are able to have an impact that nobody can understand unless you work on causes like this and unless you use a methodology of buy-in of the community and understanding the community you work in. The last but not least, my new friend, Greta Rayos, founder of Olin, Ashoka Fellow, also from Mexico. And I love Mexico, by the way. I've been there. She's the founder and the president of Olin, a citizen empowerment Mexican NGO. She has more than 10 years of experience working in the nonprofit sector and 8 being the head of an organization. She also worked for the Mexican government as an independent as an independent consultant on human rights, international humanitarian law, and other similar subjects. Under her leadership, Olin has consolidated as one of the leading organizations dealing with civic engagement, transparency, non-corruption, the rule of law, and direct democracy mechanisms. And this is very, very tough, especially the non-corruption and the rule of law. And she will share with us how she was able to influence the community, the government, and the public at large. In 2019, Greta and her team conducted a strategic litigation maneuver that forced Mexico City Congress to enact a new citizen participation law. And this is what I call scaling up. When you change a law, it looks like you've just done one action, but in reality, you have affected the generations to come and millions of people. So I just want to thank you all. I want to share the wonderful, very short bio of every one of you, and I want to thank you again for coming in. The first question is for all of you, and you can start the way you want. But as I said, in WISE, we want to shift the existing paradigms of success in the ecosystem from just the traditional scale up, which means more and more people, to scaling deep and scaling out and scaling up, deep and out. So I would like you to share with us, do you really believe in the scaling deep and what it stands for? How changing mindsets of people and traditions have a greater impact than reaching number of people without having that type of impact? And how would you define success? So you can choose one of them. How do you define success in your ideas, like for your ideas and causes? And do you really believe in the power of scaling deep? So who wants to start? You can volunteer, or I will volunteer you. Okay, yeah. Rana.
So
5 minutes.
All right.
Each.
So actually, the two questions are, I think they're really linked and connected together. How do we define success, and how do we scale deep, and how important that is in creating change makers? Most programs and services and resources and mindsets of all the stakeholders that work with people who want to improve themselves always focus on asking people to do things, and usually there's also money in response for that. And I think that sets up the person to have a mindset of, I'm waiting for somebody to save me, and a blaming mindset of why isn't the government doing something? Why aren't those rich people helping me, and so on. And this is a very negative kind of mindset. So what I call for when I think of scaling deep, it's about changing the mindset to the feeling that I have the capabilities, I'm confident in myself, that I can take control of my own challenges and create solutions that I own and I develop, because I know better what those problems are, where they come from. And if I'm creating the solution, I'm ensuring the sustainability because I own it, and I get the credibility and the incentive from the people around me who appreciate it. And actually, that's the model of We Love Reading. So what we do is we just give the women and men tools, and then we ask them as partners, not as service, not as clients, as partners, for them to go out and create their own change. So in We Love Reading, we tell them, if you really care about the children and about education and literacy, why don't you be the one who actually goes out and does something about it? And we tell them there are really easy ways. So just gathering children and reading aloud to them is enough for the children to fall in love with reading. And when children fall in love with reading, they become lifelong learners and therefore change makers, because through reading, you learn about others, you become more empathetic, you have more vocabulary to express yourself, so you're better at communication, and therefore there's less violence and more dialogue, which is very, very important going forward. So as these women and men and youth, the majority, of course, are women, start reading aloud to kids, they themselves literally and figuratively discover their own voices as well. Because as they read to the kids, they fall in love with reading and they realize that they can do something. And of course, we're talking reading and identity and culture, reading from the stories of your own culture. And it's also, you don't have to be highly educated. It's a picture book with a few lines of text. So even if you can't read, you can actually make up the stories. But on the other hand, the figurative discovering yourself and your voice is these women and men suddenly become leaders in their community, because as the children do better and the parents realize that, and the community, they become incentivized. If I can do this, catalyze, we give them a spark of discovering their inner potential, because I think every human being has the capacity to make a change, but we need to help them discover their inner capacity. And that's what We Love Reading does. So it's scaling deep. And what we found is that these women and men are reading 4 and 5 years beyond that initial 2-day training. Most projects end with when the money ends, and then everybody goes back home and that's it. Because these people are not empowered, they're not motivated to be their own change makers for their own community. And I think the last thing I'm going to say is that this is how we need to change how aid and development is done. It's not about giving services. It's about motivating people for them to create their own solutions, and then everything will be solved.
Thank you so much, Rana. And it is true, we have to think to get the buy-in of the community and to give voice to the people we want to work with. So Greta, what is success? How do you define success? And do you think scaling deep is important?
Oh my, I have been nominated.
We can't hear you. Yeah. I am very democratic. I am very democratic. Go ahead.
I love democracy, as you know. So first of all, I need to say that I'm very, very thankful to be a part of this panel with such powerful and inspiring women. Thank you so much for having me. How do I define success is a very complicated question, because I think it depends on the day. Sometimes success just means survival. It means we were able to close one working day and we're ready for the next one. We have been having very tough times, as I'm pretty sure everyone here is going through very, very hard times as well. But in the industry, let's say, for us, we define success also as changing minds. Success for me, for example, is this story that one day we were giving out a workshop on citizen engagement to kids, and there was this was very, very, very angry, and she was saying, participating is not it's not useful. Everything's going to remain the same regardless of what we do. The government is awful, blah 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 blah. And then after the workshop, during the workshop, she was very inquisitive, and she was asking a lot of questions and getting a lot of information. And after the workshop, she came to us and she said, you know what, I really used to hate representatives like Congress people, because I thought they didn't represent me at all. But now I know that I can become a representative. I want to run for Congress when I grow old. And I think that is success, changing someone's mind who is really angry and totally in despair to being someone who wants to change things and who knows she can change things. And especially if it's a girl, it's so powerful. It's something that fills your soul, and it makes sense for you to go on. So I think those little things are great successes. And of course, last year, as Iman said, my organization, which is really tiny, we're 5-6 people, we were able to force the Congress into changing a law that was not respecting a right. And when I say force, we forced them. We did not negotiate. We did not, because we couldn't. We tried to talk to them and we tried to negotiate, and they didn't care. And that's also a success, because it made us understand, number one, the power of citizens and the power of the rule of law, right? So I think those are great successes, and I would think both of them are at the same level, because they are transforming the way Mexican people see their government and the representatives, and I think that is the purpose of my organization.
Okay, thank you so much. But actually, exactly. But and that's why we needed to say that you have done two things: scale up by changing the Congress law and or the law through the Congress, and changing mindsets. Because this young lady will become, inshallah, a congresswoman, but also she will impact her children, her family, her attitude, and this is what we want people to recognize. You know, this is a great impact. You know, and because this is something that will last forever or for a lot of generations. So Naomi, we would like to hear your point of view from Liberia and doing all this great work on healthcare in this very innovative way about how you define success and scaling deep.
Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here on this dynamic, amazing panel with strong women who are change makers into the various communities and defining, daring the status quo that women cannot do it better. In Liberia, it's nothing different from every explanation here as it relates to the struggles that women and girls face every day in their life to be able to achieve and contribute meaningfully to the community. But yet and still that there have been repeated barriers, layers that have stopped women over the years from accomplishing or achieving their full potential. That we recognize at Community Healthcare Initiative is that we realize that we always promote women empowerment. Women should be in leadership, but we are not actually in Liberia. We say the elephant in the room. We are not saying what are the elephant in the room. There are a lot of social issues that affect girls' retention in school. But one of the simplest things that someone that is in a privileged community that grew up with all stigmatization will be shocked to know that thousands of girls in Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, are disempowered by the simplest biological factor called menstruation. Menstruation is a taboo in most communities. You cannot talk about period. Some people are stigmatized when they are on their period. Girls cannot afford sanitary pads, so they stay home, they skip classes, and immediately they drop out. And one of the things that also have flagged all over the period when we have worked with girls is knowing that in some culture and community, when girls see their period, they are considered mature enough to get married. So we see forceful and child and early marriages as it relates to just a natural biological factor. So we in CHR saw the need during the Ebola outbreak in 2014. Work in community, we realized that most of the girls, the students we were working with, one gender continued to be absent from school. At first, we didn't even know that menstruation was the issue. When my team and myself decided to investigate, we recognized that menstruation was stopping these girls from staying in school, because when they are on their period, they cannot afford sanitary napkins. They have no other option but just to stay away from school. And something struck us that if we say we want to promote girls' retention in school, if we say education is a fundamental human right, we need to find some sustainable solution to this problem. So we started first by training girls how to make reusable pads, but we realized that it was not sustainable and that we always had to come back and give them materials. So we decided to work with women group and put them in small cooperative where they can produce the pad and sell the pad, and that will also serve as an alternative income for them. And over the period, we have worked in 7 of the 15 counties in Liberia. For me, success is when we were able to petition our government and ensure that sexual reproductive health and rights be taught in school, and menstruation stands as a standalone topic in schools.
Wow, I am so impressed. And you know, it's not only in sub-Saharan Africa. I am from North Africa, and we have similar things for rural girls and girls in the South. So I am very impressed, and thank you so much. And yes, the elephant in the room, I love this. So thank you so much. And now to my friend, Mariana. I want to ask you the same question, and it's important because even if we are saying similar things, it's important that our voice is heard. So, and it's also important to define that our causes is really what leads us to care about scaling deep. It's not just because we're women, it's because of the causes we choose that we are, so we are not different than men, it's the causes we choose that are different, and that's why scaling deep is important. So how come your domestic violence hotline turned into, in my opinion, a revolution, where it affected violence in the streets, and how you define your
Hi,
success?
man. I'm so happy to see you. And thank you for the invitation, and also sharing the panel with all incredible women. I think success can be a little bit like talking about impact. It can be very big and talk about very big scaling things. Successful can be a humongous corporate thing that you achieve, or it can be scaling deep as a human being. And I think
Yes.
On the causes of women, on what we do, and especially on what Orique and what I do, is success means that you're sticking through hard times, and you're keeping, and you're doing, and you're doing, and you're doing. And like Greta said, some days are horrible days, and some days are great days, and you achieve a very great thing. And talking about impact, everybody thinks that you have to have a lot of numbers, a very big number of people. And we do, and we take care a lot of women, because the hotline is a program that can reach very, very wide enough worldwide. But I think the most important thing is that scaling deep for us is what we're talking about: human beings here, all of us. All the work we do is talking, especially they're women, men, but it's the change that they're doing within them. And I think that impact that we do on every woman's life, it's a success for us. It's a woman who takes care of herself, who takes care of children, who wants to have another option in life, who wants to stop being abused, or who wants to start working, who wants to start studying, who wants to have a different life. That, I think, it's more meaningful than if we take care of 1 million women and we don't set a change line, or we don't impact in their own lives. I think that is for us what success can really mean. Is even if one woman, and that as you said, if we impact the one woman, we impact the family, and we impact the community, and we impact the society, and then we impact the country. And that's how I think women have the strength and the purpose and the courage to be like a rainfall, who really it goes deeper and deeper and wider. And for us, sometimes it's very hard, and sometimes, okay, we'll impact 1,000 women, but only with one really who can change their own life, it can make a difference in the world.
Thank you, Mariana. I also want to share that when Mariana was here, because WISE started a long time ago, and Mariana was one of the founders. We called it the Women Endowment Fund, and it was wonderful times. Yeah. I think it was 6 years ago or maybe more. But I also think, yeah, and she came to Egypt. But I think also what is interesting was that they have done a study where they found that the families that they were able to help, women who were, and to reduce violence in the home, reduced crimes in the same areas where these families were by 10% in the street. That's why the private sector were interested in, and it was shops that gave her organization some funding. So this is also the scaling deep part. You change the family, you change the mindset, you change how people behave, and it affects everyone. And I think this is the message we are trying to say. It does affect a lot of people, but more than just talking to them, it really changed their behavior. So thank you, Mariana. One of your fans, you have to know. Okay, Rana, I'll go back to you. Because I mean, what you said was wonderful. What you said initially was, I went to the people and I empowered them. I gave them voice. I told, I did not tell them what to do. And by making them, own their own voice and agency, they then understood the benefit of what you're doing. So I think that's what you said. And I think it's very important, and it's an important lesson. And I understand that was your methodology. But I would like you to elaborate a little bit, because how are you able to build a sense of shared value? and common purpose in the communities you work with. I mean, you're in 53 countries, and I don't know how many, 8,000 clubs or something in Jordan. And how also, what lesson? I mean, you said something similar when you said the donors should understand that. But what are the lessons that you think the global industry of funding and investors should learn? So first of all, what are the shared values and how did you convince the communities? But also, what is the lesson here to the investors, whether they're donors or people or the global ecosystem should learn from the women of the South?
Great questions. Thank you very much. I think I'm gonna start by answering a lot of these questions. Them as a scientist. You know, I'm a scientist myself. I'm a molecular biologist. So when I felt that my role goes beyond my work, my job, and my classroom, and my lab, and extends to the wider community, which is everybody's responsibility, and that stems from our culture and our religion to take care of the people around us. And so from this perspective, sometimes if you take a bird's eye view coming into a sector that's different from your own sector, you see things that others don't see because they're so much into the issue. And so I was able to kind of say, if I want to improve lives, and I realized that the way to do that is to address root causes, right? What is that pivotal point that will allow system change with the most impact and the least cost, so much more effective and efficient? So this was my approach. And what I realized through trial and error. So when I started, when I realized that the way to change mindsets is through reading, and then I asked myself the question, how do I make children fall in love with reading? And I found out it's by reading aloud by a parent. But then it's impossible to train every parent. So one person to read aloud to the children. I did it myself. So I became the change I wanted to see in the world. I didn't ask somebody to do it. I myself did it. So I was the practitioner. I was the refugee. I was the person in the field. And then through trial and error, again, that's human-centered design, or it's evolution. You keep trying until you find the right model to work. And so the lessons that I learned through this is that any program that you want has to intrinsically touch on the human feelings of the person, right? We are humans. We all evolved similarly. So what makes us tick is usually this feeling of I own something. I control it. Nobody tells me what to do. Nobody likes to be told what to do. This is all, we all know that. And we always learn through stories when somebody shares a story. And so We Love Reading was about, I shared my story with people. And then people said, oh, I can do that. But the unique, or I call it the secret sauce, is that they don't do it like I did it. No, they have full ownership. They start saying, I know my neighborhood. I know how to get the kids. I choose the place. I figured out the time. So they are in total control. This feeling of total control and agency is that secret sauce, the motivation. So if I was going to give a recommendation for other programs all over the world or the globe, is when you create programs, the center of that program should be the person, and you don't call that I am serving him. That's the wrong wrong jargon, wrong mindset. It's about how can I support them as they figure out what they want to do. No, so I'm not the sage on the stage. I'm just on the side, and they are the center. So all programs need to shift their mindset, their jargon, the way they talk about things, and the people just enable people to do it by themselves. The second lesson learned, which is so it has to be that has that. Second, it has to be simple. Can't be complicated, because you're talking to every person on the street, the grandfather, the grandmother who doesn't know how to read. So it's not about only targeting elite or people who are educated. You want to target the minimum denominator, which is everybody. And the only way to do that is to have a very simple thing to do, right? And that's the common values, right? So for our program, it's about, you care about the kids in your community. You care about reading and literacy. Who doesn't care about that, right? So it's about those universal values that are shared without making it specific to a culture. It has to be flexible. So the third thing is that any model has to be very flexible. And that's what We Love Reading is. You speak it, you read in your native language. You read from your own stories. You choose the church, the mosque, the community center, and you become the expert. Lastly, when we want to see the impact of this, of what's happening, traditionally, people, donors, program providers, they collect statistics. How many people man, but sometimes the numbers don't mean anything. It doesn't. What's really happening on the ground is very, very different. And so what we say is that it's that wrong mindset, that wrong framework. It's not about I am collecting data from them. No, what we do, and this is a very thin line, we ask them, could you please, you are the experts, can you share your stories with us? You are our partners. And when you share your stories, you are actually developing the next stage of the program, because we are incorporating all your stories, your learnings, so they see themselves in the next training, giving advice and giving recommendations. So this kind of involvement is so important. And the last point I'm going to say, when we invite people to be with us, they have to be at an equal level. Many international and global meetings, they bring in people from the South just to tick a box. We have them at the table. But when they're at the table, there's power dynamics, and they're not being really involved. And simple things can be done. For example, the language usually is in English, and the Arab people or the people from Nigeria have to translate. No, it should be the other way around. Why shouldn't we be speaking in our native language, and the global North, the onus is on them to have a translator trying to understand what we're saying, because we express ourselves better in our native languages. And then it becomes a barrier. Only those who speak English get to be at the platform. So these are a few of my recommendations going forward.
Well, what we saw throughout the years, we've been working with women for the past 20 years, and one of the main problems in Mexico, I'm talking about Mexico, even though it is worldwide, it's domestic violence. And what we saw is that women were calling, and we have a helpline where you can call anytime you want. It's nationwide, and the same therapist is going to answer the phone. So that way, we really do a follow-up on each person who calls, on each woman who calls. And they were saying, what can we do? I'm suffering violence. This is my problem. And as Rana said, they have to make their own decisions. They have to, but they want to really reduce the violence within their houses. And one of the problems is that it's cultural. They grew with it. They grew up with it. They don't know any difference of how to educate their children in a different way. And so we started working with them and in a follow-up through different sessions. And what we saw is that every time women were working on themselves and on the issues with their houses and working with their partners, what we saw is that violence were reduced. And when you live in a violent home, doesn't matter who abuses of who, the children, once they grew up to 12 years old, normally the parents took them out of the schools because they needed to work and they needed to start helping with the families. But the children who didn't want to have that future because they saw it and they lived in poverty and they lived in violence, their options, what they were, the guns, the gangs, the living out in the streets, the cartel, the drug cartels or everything. So what they do is if you offer them another option, if you keep them in school, if women have an income also and help with an income, so that kept the children in school, and that reduces the percentage of reduces of the violence in the streets, because you're not born to be a violent person. It's like that's how you were raised up, or the circumstances in your life. And usually, sometimes your own home throws you out on the streets because of different circumstances. And once the children said, okay, what are my options? I don't have social mobility, I don't have work, I lack of education. And here, for example, at the organized crime, they're offering me thousands and thousands of dollars, and I'm never going to be able to reach. And I really don't see the difference. So what they did is they choose out of their homes and out of the, and that impacted the entire society and the entire communities. So what we do is we take them, we take the mother, we take the youth, and teach them, especially first on the well-being, because violence is a mental problem, it's a health problem. It's, you're talking about frustration, about anger, about fury, about sadness, about all the emotions that you cannot put in together or work together. So what we do is we work with the women, we work with the youth, and then the women's work with themselves, with the other partners. And that's how they start working with the children and offering them different opportunities and different more social mobility that we offer them. And once the women are better off with having a better reality and a better partner, the crimes were lowered. And also, as Rana said, we're not there to give them or to educate them, but we're also to guide them. Because I always say, someone in your life guides you, either a teacher, a parent, your partner, a son, a daughter, or something. And that people, it takes you by the hand and guides you through different phases. And I think that's what really women need to do and children need to do, is we needed to go to the women and said, don't take the children out of school, because the more education they have, the more opportunities you will have in life. So that's a problem that you need to comprehend women as a whole, because she's the center of a widened ecosystem. She's the one who educates. She's healthcare. She educates. Maybe her parents live with them. No, she is the one who take them to the doctor, to school, everything. So once she's empowered, she's well, and she's liberated, I think, she can really work on all the ecosystems around her. And one of the major ecosystems is really the violence that they're living, that we're all living, because we're not only talking about sexual and physical violence that we always think is the worst thing. It's psychological violence. And that
Thank you. So. No.
I think that the world, throughout history, the world has been constructed out of a masculine vision. So we need to deconstruct that to understand a better place for us. And it's not that who has more power. It's equal. And we want to start working together. But to work together, we need to deconstruct a lot of things in our own lives, especially violence. It's a subject that I always say it does not have to be up on the table. So violence in families, violence in women, in children, it doesn't have to exist. It should be a zero tolerance and banned and everything.
Thank you so much, Mariana. Always inspiring. I think the two examples here, two cases, two stories that really needs to change the narrative in how the ecosystem looks at impact. Both are working with communities, both take long time, but they had a great impact. Both started with a very simple and one strategy, make the person the core, work with the mothers or the parents, and in a simple way, as Rana was saying, and in a comprehensive way, because a woman as a whole, you change the mental health, you work with them for some time, and violence is less, or you make change makers of communities that they believe in themselves. Important. I want to move to Naomi, because I think you've done a lot of things, Naomi, and especially the elephant in the room. But actually, you worked with the Ministry of Education to bring reproductive health education into the national school curriculum. And if you come from Africa, and I come from Africa, being able to influence governments, I am more than impressed. And therefore, it's interesting to see, because again, working with the government and changing something within the government is going to affect people for generations. And I think this is an impact with numbers too. So it has a lot of people because it will affect all the children in the future. And it also changes mindsets at the same time. How did you do this? And how easy or difficult?
Thank you. So just to say what Marina and Irina said is that once you are working with the community, you are not working for the community. You need to ensure that it is a collective effort, and the people who the issues affect has that agency to lead on their own change, until we can put people who the issues affect at the center of the change that we want. That's the only way the change that we are all hoping for can be sustained. And we realize that menstrual health hygiene affected school-age growing girls. It also affected girls from low-income community. It also affected women lively in economic hood. So we decided that for this project, we are going to work along with the women, not for the women, and allow them to lead the change where they can be able to make reusable pads. And we know that you can do all of the advocacy. Policy is with the government. The government of a country has the power to implement and ensure that system and processes are adhered to. So we knew that we could do all of the advocacy, all of the awareness, but to have a sustained engagement is to not lobby with government, lobby with lawmakers, lobby with the rightful agency, ministry agency that is responsible for girls' retention, which is Ministry of Education, so they can ensure that menstrual hygiene management is inclusive in the curriculum, not all, but ensuring that all of the bathrooms within all of these schools have all of the wash facility, that when girls are on their period, they have an enabling environment that will support them while they are in school, keeping them safe until they get home. The next thing is to ensure that they have separate bathrooms. Most of the rural schools, there are one bathroom for both male and female. No, girls need safe space where they can be able to be safe and address or attend to issues that affects them. So we figure out that to have a more longer sustained engagement is to not lobby with government, to put a policy that will ensure that girls are safe when they are on their period, and that barrier that prevents girls from going to school when they are on their period is eliminated, and girls can have access to education like the other gender. And if we say education is a fundamental human right, then menstrual hygiene management is also a fundamental human right issue.
Thank you so much. You know what I love, guys, is that, you know, I think it was all of you who said this. Like, we talk about, oh, the world has big, big problems, but then you come in with one simple solution and it solves, it just kind of ripples down. I love to read. The girls have to have, sanitary pads. Women have to have mental well-being and just, income, which is like, and really this is what is beautiful about our social entrepreneurs and women social entrepreneurs. And what we need to teach the world and tell the world that such simple approach is the right one, given, and it has impact on generations. My dearest Greta, I was reading about you and my team, who actually, Ivana and Claire and everyone who did a lot of great work. Interesting about your approach was that you really were dealing with, you're so concerned with civic engagement of young people, and you did a lot of data analysis. But what was interesting is that you have so many layers of people you're working with. You're working with the youth, with the communities, you're working with the legislators, multiple levels of society. You have very strong ties with the local and federal legislators, the youth and the wider Mexican community. And again, just like I asked with Naomi, what is your secret? And what is the lesson we should show the world? Like, I am a woman, I am a social entrepreneur, I can work with all of this. I juggle things like every juggles 100 things to do. And then I also
I don't know if it's a good secret or not, but I think that I can relate a lot to Rana. So when I started my organization, my question was like, how am I going to be able to change the things that I want to change? I'm just like one person. I have zero money, zero connections. I don't know where to start. And then it hit me that I needed to start doing the things that I know how to do and that I love doing. So I started doing research. I started doing a research project on how youth policy was built in Mexico. And what I found was that youth policy was not being built in Mexico. We didn't have any kind of plan or anything. So then when I found that, my organization was devoted to having like national strategies to make sure that young people were being heard and that young people were being included. So what I did was, I don't know, I mean, like I used my expertise and I used the things that I love doing to help me create a greater purpose. And that has always been my approach to life, I guess, because I consider myself a little bit moody. So when I have to do things that I don't like, it's not good news. It's really hard. So I try to keep having fun, and I try to keep myself really really interested in what I am doing. So I use my strengths and my personal beliefs and my preferences to shape the way that my work is going, and that has helped my organization also evolve. So as you said, we started dealing only with youth participation. So our main issue was, how do we make sure that young people are represented and that young people are having a say in decision making? And from there we realized that the main issue was not only making sure that these spaces were open for young people. We discovered that these spaces were closed for everyone. So now we're trying to get citizens of all ages engaged in making public matters not so difficult to understand. It's been a very long road, but I would say my secret is to keep my own self, having fun. When I stop having fun, everything becomes horrible, and I just lose it, and I wanna like change careers and stuff. So that's how I do it.
Thank you so much. I mean, again, four wonderful stories that I think should about scaling impact, whether it is up or deep and then out. Many lessons, and therefore, because you ladies are so interesting and wonderful, we're running out of time. So I want every one of you quickly to say 3 things that you want to say to the world about the voices from the South and the impact that we as women social entrepreneurs do. Kind of telegraphs to whoever is in control of the ecosystem and who are still using different types of measurement. And let me start this time by Naomi. Telegram, 3 quick. Are you there, Naomi?
No, I'm here.
She's not there?
Yeah.
Okay.
3
Quick,
what?
3 telegrams. Okay, I was saying that now because we're running out of time, I need every one of you to say 3 or 2 things about scaling deep and your interest in it, and a lesson to the world about the work, the importance of a new measurement for impact, and how this is important.
Thank you.
But
okay,
like
so scaling up in impact is that you need to be passionate, you need to be deliberate about what you believe in and what you want to do. You need to interrogate spaces that people are not waiting to interrogate. You have to link with like-minded people so they can work along with you to ensure that you have a collective team that is working to ensure that change. And believe in women leadership. They have the agency, they have the leadership, and they are able to lead their own change.
Thank you so much.
I would say, number
quickly,
1,
Greta,
believe in yourself. Even when it's really hard to believe, you can do that change. You can do it. It's maybe going to take a while, but you can do it. And also be an ally to other women. I think this is very, very important. And Sometimes it's hard because you think like, why should I be an ally to her? You should be an ally to her. Thank you.
Okay. Rana?
The
No, Rana,
messages
you're
is
mute.
that first of all, you need to trust yourself, that you are unique and you are special. And so whatever you give the world is going to be very unique and special. And that's one. Two, you should write your story. We need to hear these stories. We only hear stories from a particular group. So write your story. Someday it'll be published and you will be a role model. And three, you don't have to do something big. It starts with doing something small. And then others will carry it on and do other things. So it's the butterfly effect. When a butterfly flutters its wings in China, there's a hurricane in the Atlantic. What is that? You move the wind a little bit. So each one of you is a butterfly that can make change that adds up in time and space to a huge impact in the future.
Well, always remember that
Love
we
you,
have a voice
Mariana.
that needs to be heard. Never stop doing, even if you're in a bad day or not thinking that you're achieving success. You will get there, and you have to be very constant in whatever you decide to choose or whatever subject that is important to you. It is constant that you really get to the goal, and choose a subject that really passionates yourself. To remember, we're part of the solution. We're not the solution. We're being part as a social change makers of being that part, and I think that's what is really important.
Thank you so much, ladies. I wish we had more time. We really have to do this again. I think we have heard very strong stories, and it's important to tell the world that scaling deep is important. When you change one person, you affect generations. When you change a policy or a rule or a law, you also affect generations. And if people and donors and universities are serious about real impact that affects people in the future and generations to come, they have to start supporting scaling deep and scaling up, and they have to be patient with women and social entrepreneurs in general who are trying to really change the world. Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. I am so happy. I wish all of you are in Egypt and I can really entertain you. So, and thank you, Iwana and Claire and everybody in Ashoka Arab
Thank
World for all your
you. Thank
support.
you, everybody.
I love you
Bye.
all.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.